Welcome everyone to the Breakthrough Leadership video blog here on YouTube, or maybe you're looking at this on our blog. And we're glad that you're here, because today we're going to talk about, in this season 1, episode 5 here, we're going to talk about what it means to be on the same page. This is going to be a great topic.
Yeah, sometimes I just like to be on the same page with myself, Matt. But let's start with it.
Yeah. So, let's define quickly, and maybe, you've told me a story before, Greg, about what it means to be on the same page. So we're clear. What are we talking about?
Yeah, I love the stories about being on the same page with people, because I used to have this thing I hung on my wall that was like an award I would give out. It's called Unclear on the Concept,
right.
which I realized later was really an indictment on myself, right? Because I'm the leader and they're unclear on the concept, right? Well, yeah, I got a great story about being on the same page, Matt. I love this story. And the people who know me well, I can just say a couple of words and they get it, right? I call this the gray modeling clay story. We were working on a job in the machine shop probably 20 plus years ago. We had a big piece of metal on the machine and we were running flood coolant on it. Well, it was extending far beyond the table of the machine. So we took some clay and built a little dam on there so that the flood coolant would drain back off on the table, right? So we could recirculate it. I mean, if you're not familiar with that environment, just try to picture it. Otherwise it's just going all over the floor. We built this little dam on there and it's working just fine on this big mold base. Well, what happened was the operator says to me, "Hey, I'm out of clay. I need more clay or I can't run the machine." We shut the job down. Right. And I grabbed the box, and one of the guys who was working on the job with us, I said, "Listen, go get some more of this. Just go anywhere in town. Go get us some more and get right back here as quick as you can." No problem. He leaves. I realize like an hour and a half has gone by and I haven't seen him. He comes back in my office. He's out of breath. He can't believe it. I couldn't find anything in town. I couldn't find any of this in town. You got to be kidding me. Did you look here? Did you look there? We covered the bases. Absolutely. He'd been everywhere, Matt. He said, "Yeah," as he walked out the door. "Yeah, there were a lot of other colors, but I couldn't find any that were gray." The box I handed him was gray, and he was looking for gray. I mean, it just boggles my mind. But this is a great example of how, hey, it's not like he didn't know what we were using it for. It's different if people just they just don't get it. He got it, and yet we clearly were not on the same page.
I'm just picturing the moment where you're staring at him going, "I'm not sure I understand what you're saying."
That was a traumatic moment for me, Matt.
But look, if you've been on a team, or you've led a team, especially if you've led a team, you've had this moment where you go, "It's weird. I said it very clearly."
Yeah. I was clear. I told him exactly what I wanted, right? That's when you know you've screwed up right there.
So what do you do? I mean, what do you do? And at that point, I think that there's maybe 3 or 4 suggestions that we can make today to get on the same page with your team. We actually have an entire framework that we could do, a 1-day immersive and a 12-week follow-up. But just to give you some tips today, one thing that I've heard you say, Greg, is to generate repetition as a leader, right?
Absolutely. I used to say the same things over and over to the point that my people would finish my sentences, Matt. And when they start finishing your sentences, then you might have gotten close to actually continuously feeding in the repetition that was necessary for people to be on the same page with you. I used to have people who would say to me, "I just ask myself, what would Greg do?" And I think, okay, that's great as long as they, as we're that intimate, that close. But if I've not been addressing these things repeatedly, if they don't understand the intent of the job we're on, if they don't understand the mission that we're on together, then I haven't done my job. It's about repeating, Matt.
So don't get frustrated with people if you've only said it once, they didn't hear you. At least know it's your job to repeat. So generate repetition. The second thing is, and this is a very nuanced tip, but ask what they heard, because they might have heard gray clay.
It's remarkable, the limitation of verbal communication. Yeah. It's remarkable. Right. And so don't assume anything. Don't assume that you're doing it wrong or they're doing it wrong. The point is, you need to ask what they heard. They need to be able to frame it back to you. And it's not like a stupid thing where you're saying, "Hey, okay, dummy, tell me what you thought I said." It's not that way at all. This is a time when you as a leader have to be responsible to let them frame those ideas back to you in their own words. You know, you might even learn something.
Well, it's powerful and it can be simple. And sometimes if I find myself not listening as a leader, what I'll just say is, so Greg, what you said is go get gray clay. And then you could say, no, any clay is fine.
But if they can't frame it back to you, Matt, then you got to start over. You have not handed the ball off. You haven't completed the process.
So generate repetition, number one. Number two is ask what they heard. And then the third thing that you could do is, and we just love this, is to think install instead of announce.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, clearly. Yeah, the day of the memo is over.
Right.
You know, you can't just put a memo out that announces something to everybody and now we're on the same page. I get in this strangulation mode when I think about people who would just say, what do you mean I copied you on that email? Like as if somehow that made it on me instead of on them, you know. Now, if you're the leader, you know, not only have you stated it and stated it and stated it has become a part of the body of your language, of everything you're doing as a leader, you've let it feed back to you so that you know that it's clear. But then it has to be installed. What do we mean by installed, Matt? Installed really means that it now operates within them, right?
Yeah, we think about it like a computer. You install
You got an app on your phone, right?
Right.
You push the button and this is what happens every time. That has to be the process of your thinking, to be on the same page with your people. Super
powerful. And good little analogy that you made was about CCing people. Just because you've CC'd someone on an email doesn't mean you've installed it. So that's a great anchor. Think install versus announce. And then the last one, it's going to sound obvious, but it's an awful powerful one, which is to take responsibility. Isn't that right?
Yeah, this is clearly the responsibility of the leader. Now, I'm not going to say that this doesn't denote higher levels of leadership in your team when they are pursuing you for these things.
Right.
They should do that. But ultimately, it's your responsibility as a leader to be certain these things happen. You know, and these things don't happen like in the heat of the battle, they don't get installed. You don't take the time to install stuff in the heat of the battle, right? You do it and do it and do it so that when it's needed, it's already there. It's your responsibility as the leader.
It would be great as a future vision for everyone watching is if you would say, you know, I believe there's a day when someone else would tell me, I'm worried we're not on the same page because there's a culture of being on the same page.
That's right. Fantastic.
Yeah, very good. So that's what it means to be on the same page. Generate repetition. Ask what they heard. Think install versus announce and take responsibility. I think this is going to be good, Greg, if people will use it. And we appreciate you joining us in the Breakthrough Leadership vlog today, and we'll see you next time.